I see you, I hear you, you matter. I see you, I hear you, you matter. Most of the students that I work with on a daily basis live in some of the most marginalized communities that exist in our society. And at times they wonder whether or not they're seen, whether or not they're heard, and whether or not they matter. So on a daily basis, when I work with these students, I make it my business to let them know, whether through my words or through my actions, that indeed they are seen, indeed they are heard, and indeed they matter. When I think about this work that I'm doing, I work a lot with Black and Latino males, again, who are existing in some of the most marginalized spaces that exist in our society. And when we think about the research and understand the dominant narratives that frame their existence, a lot of times it doesn't look very pretty. So we understand that these students are leading in high school suspensions, expulsions, they're disproportionately placed in special education. And what's more troubling is that 1 in 3, specifically when we talk about African-American males, the Department of Justice predicts that 1 in 3 will likely spend some time in prison, on probation, or under some form of watch by the judicial system. And for me, that's problematic. An educational theorist by the name of Garrett Albert Duncan talks about this idea of these students existing in a place that is beyond love. What does he mean by that? These students are targeted in decrepit school systems that have become militarized police zones. And so they are beyond love. An example of being beyond love is when I was in Syracuse, I worked with young students, and it was a middle school that got turned into a high school, and so they had to have a group of middle school students who stayed there behind in the school. Now, I first met these students that I was working with in summer school because they were in summer school for math. And when the high school moved in, there was tension over who would be able to use the gym for playing basketball. And so the high school student team got the first use of the gym. And so they had a middle school team, and so the idea was, we're going to take the middle school team, we'll take these players out of math class and let them practice during the day instead of going to math class. Now, I've met these students in summer school because they failed math. And so these students are being told that education is not important. And so I asked the question, would you do this to your own children? Would you do this to people that you love? And the answer would be no. So these students were existing in a place that was beyond love. And so the students that I work with in New Haven are navigating a very complex city. When we think about the violent crime index across the nation, the average is 202.6. The violent crime index for New York City, 325.9. The violent crime index for New Haven is 574.5, more than double that of the national average. And these are the neighborhoods where my students are living and existing. Some of the research now that's coming out is equating the experiences that these students are dealing with to post-traumatic stress disorder, that which our soldiers experience when they come home from the war field. However, our students are not leaving the war field or the battlefield because the battlefield is where they exist on a daily basis. And so we know what's going on in the neighborhoods, and if we take a look at the schools, it's not looking any more promising. Some of you may have heard of this idea of the school-to-prison pipeline, where schools funnel students along this pipeline that lead from schools to prison. A lot of the behaviors that used to be handled in schools by the principal or other administrators are now being handled by the police officers in the school and the court system. And when we think about what's happening to these students in these schools, we have to understand they're dealing with shame, they're dealing with being silenced, and they're dealing with being looked at through a deficit perspective. They're not being given the tools to deal with what they're facing on the outside or on the inside of school, and so they're suppressing a lot of these emotions. And when these emotions bubble over in school, that doesn't mix with the zero tolerance policies that we have in place. And so what the zero tolerance policies are doing, they're suspending a lot of students. And when you get suspended repeatedly, you fall further and further behind in your work, and you start to ask yourself the question, is school important for me? And so when they get to this stage, these students become easier to push out. Now, if you're 16 to 17-year-olds and you don't have a high school diploma or a GED, you're pretty much unemployable. So what do? You turn to the underground economy, and then you end up getting arrested. So you see how the school can lead certain students on this pipeline to exist as a population that's going to end up in prison. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what are we doing? What are we doing to interrupt this cycle? One of the reasons that we get critiqued as sociologists is that we'll research a topic, tell you what's wrong with that topic or that issue that we're researching, wave goodbye, and go on and research another topic. But as an applied sociologist, we believe in using sociological research methods to bring about changes in the communities that we work with. And so our research is not on communities, but our research is for and with communities to find solutions to the problems that they're facing. And so over the past 10 years, I've been able to use hip-hop culture in urban schools to help schools find problems to the issues that they're facing with certain populations of students. And so some people ask the question, why hip-hop? Originally, when I first started going into the schools, the parents were like, hip-hop, yeah, you're gonna tell my son that music is bad, he needs to listen to some real music, right? I'm like, no, because that's not what this is about. I grew up in Harlem during the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, Lincoln Projects, right? And so I knew what hip-hop did for me. Hip-hop helped to save my life. Hip-hop helped me to form my identity. Hip-hop gave me a voice to speak to the oppression that we were facing in our neighborhoods. And so when I saw what hip-hop could do for me, I knew that we can work with hip-hop to work with the youth who are suffering in our school systems today. And so that's what we did. We used hip-hop to reach the students in a program that we later called the Crossroads Collective. Now, the way that this program started, I was given a presentation on sociology and education in New York City, and one of the assistant principals of the school happened to be in my session and said, you moved to Connecticut, I want you to come and meet with my staff. So I met with the staff, and they were telling me they were having an issue with Black and Latino males who were dropping out of school or not attending school. And so when I looked at the data, you had students who had between 75 and 150 class absences by this time, and this was in January. And so this wasn't meaning that they were missing full days, but they would come to school for lunch and then only go to class in the afternoon. So 150 absences for a number of the students. And so I said, okay, I can develop this program that is based on hip-hop pedagogy, but since they don't come to school, when are we gonna have this program? Is it gonna be an after-school program? And they said no. They said it's gonna be at 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursdays. I'm like, you set me up for failure, man. Right? You just said they don't come to school in the morning and you're gonna set the program up at 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursdays. That makes sense, not, right? And so on the first day, I go in, after I go past the metal detectors, I meet the assistant principal, Dina, and she comes to me and starts to give me a preemptive apology in the event that no one shows up. So we walk down a long hallway. As soon as we get to the room, it's about 8:55 in the morning. All of the students are there, right? And so we're like, okay, they're there. So now what do we do? So I walk in, they don't know who I am, I don't know who they are. So I start with a spoken word poem and start, spitting this verse in front of them. So they start to turn around and look at me like, who is this old dude in front of the room trying to rap, right? But after I finished, they gave me their head nods of approval, and I said, how many of you are writers? No one raised their hand. I said, how many of you are rappers or MCs? And they raised their hand. I said, well, why don't you consider yourself a writer? Well, we thought you were talking about that regular school writing. I'm like, no. And so when we opened up their pads on their phones, it was filled with poems and rap verses. So we're like, no, you are writers. And so we started to do this, and we allowed them to kind of share their pain, their joy, their hope through the writing of rap verses. And so on that first day, we moved back the chairs, we got into a circle or a cipher that we call in hip hop, and we started spitting verses, right? And so I started to learn more about them in that 15 minutes than a lot of the teachers had learned about them for most of the school year in that 15 minutes. And when they started to share and talk about all of this stuff, we knew we had something special at this point in time. The next week, I come in. We were supposed to have 25 students. There were 44 students in there. Now, I don't know where these students came from, but I guess their friends told them about it, and so they showed up. And we were in there, we were doing, what we do, and then the school safety officers came, and it was 2. So I thought someone got in trouble, and I said, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, well, some of these students are the ones that we would chase through the hallway there and here, so we don't really have anything to do. I was like, all right, so you can come in and chill with us. And so that's what they did. And so this is what we did. We shared different things. We talked about, sociological theory. We talked about critical media literacy. We talked about the school to prison pipeline. We had political debates. We did all of these things in the classroom. And so the students then asked me, well, how much do you get paid to be here? I was like, well, I don't get paid to be here. And it was like, you don't get paid to be here? You're stupid. I was like, okay. So after they revealed my stupidity of me being there for free, I told them that it wasn't about the money. I was there because time is more valuable than money. If they were to give me money, or if I gave someone money, I can get that money back. But me sharing my time with them, that's time that I will never get back. And so they were more important than money for me. I told them about the fact that people poured into my life in order for me to be here in this space, to be able to teach you on these days that I come in here. And so you are more important than any amount of money. It was like, all right, you cool, right? And so they gave me the stamp of approval. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was to start to highlight their voices and show them to the teachers in the school. And so we started to do these videos. And this first video project that we did was called Behind the Verse. And so the students would, recite one of their rap verses, and then after that, explain it so the teachers will understand what they were talking about and hear their voices. And so this video that I'm going to show you right now is a short video by one of my students, and the prompt was My Life.
I said hungry young kid in the game to get my bread up. Lost my little bro and I'm just trying to keep my head up. Been about a month and I ain't getting any better. About to act like a rat and start snapping for the cheddar just so I can make it rain, and I ain't talking about the weather. Self-made individual, my flow is so original. Overlook my school cause teacher treat me like a criminal. If you don't know my life, then let me paint you a visual. Pill popping stepmom, hungry money dad that'll only do stuff for me if money's in the bag. I buy my own shoes, own clothes, and I don't mean to brag, but a dude only 18, staying with them stacks. I'm an east side rider. All you people liars, caught a case and now you people singing like a choir. Pretty much in those lyrics, I was just saying how I lost my bro, and I was trying to keep my head up, and about how when I was in Tampa, like I had a stepmom that was on drugs, and like they didn't really look after me like that. Like my dad would only do stuff for me if like money was involved. Like he wasn't giving me nothing. Like I had to pretty much get it on my own. And that's when I came up to New Haven and stuff like that. So pretty much that's all I'm talking about. And like when I'm in school, like teachers, they like overlook me. Like I overlook my school because teachers treat me like a criminal because they be like, oh, he black and he got headphones and stuff, so like he's just gonna go to jail or something. I don't even want him around. Like let's just suspend him and get him out of school. That's pretty much how I was looked at like when I was in Tampa, because it's kind of racist down there, and that's why I really didn't like it down there. But like I had mad friends, but still, that's pretty much what I was spitting about. That's it.
And we would show these videos and different things like that to the administrators to let them know what the students were working on and what they were feeling and what they were going through in that space. Now, all of the verses that were shared weren't that clean. There were times where I had to wash my ears out with hand sanitizer because of the filth that came across in some of the verses. But a lot of them were clean. And one of the things that I didn't do in the classroom is I didn't demonize them. I didn't demonize youth. I didn't demonize their culture, because if you demonize youth and their culture, that's one of the fastest ways to destroy any bridges of connecting with these students. So I was able to challenge them in the classroom to step their vocabulary up, to write rhymes that weren't oppressive to women, to write rhymes that weren't peddling Black death and different things like that. And so in this classroom space, they were challenged, but they were challenged in a space where they were also supported. And the students felt like they mattered and that their voices were being heard in this space. And so when we talk about minding the gap, we tried to mind the gap between students and graduation. Now, when we use hip hop in the classroom, I'm not saying if you go into a classroom and you put on a JC song, all troubles are going to fall down by the riverside. No. That's not what's going to happen, right? Because hip-hop culture is not a magic wand. In these programs, hip-hop is the main act, but we had a supporting cast there. There were guidance counselors there who believed in the program. There was the administration who believed in the program, and a few teachers who believed in the program. And so we worked together to surround these students with support services, and that's how we were successful in this place. We worked with them to not be mindless consumers, right? We wanted them to be critical consumers of the culture, but not stop there, but be critical producers of their culture, to use their voice to articulate their realities to other people, because their voice mattered. And we wanted them to know that on a day-to-day basis. And so when we talk about this program, through this program, we brought them back into the realm of love, right? Because the program was focused on them. It was focused on their experience, how they navigated their lives, how they navigated their neighborhoods, and how they dealt with harsh urban realities and found hope through the use of hip-hop culture. And so the question that you may be asking is, so what? You had people in class spitting rhymes and laughing and having fun and learning. But the so what is, the assistant principal monitored these students, throughout the marking periods and from semester to semester. And what they found was disciplinary referrals for these students went down to almost zero. GPAs went up, and school attendance started to go up, right? And it's not just because we were tutoring or anything like that in the classroom, because you don't want me to tutor your students in math or anything like that. It'd be a disaster. But we were centering their experiences in that classroom space, and that energy started to spill over to other areas of their life. And so one of the things that we saw, and one of the most proud moments that I had, is that these students who weren't supposed to graduate, right? They went into the program because they weren't supposed to graduate. By working with us, the students who stayed in the program walked across the stage and got their high school diplomas. And one of the things I found out in doing this work and I'll leave you with this, is that students don't care what we know. They just want to know that we care. Thank you very much.